Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Resilient Lawyer podcast. And it is proudly hosted by Professional Mind Resilience Institute. I'm Mareike, and with me, I also have my co host, Advocate Sonia Cillier. Hi, Sonia.
Hello, Marika.
Great. So today we have a very vibrant guest with us, Rosemary van den Bogert, and she's the owner of Auxcon. Now, today's topic is quite interesting and I also think very important. It's building resilience through systems, why automation is the future of legal professionals. So, Rosemary, before we get into the topic and have a nice conversation about that, just tell everybody that's watching, how did you get into this specific industry, like how you started Auxcon, for example?
Hello, Baraka and Sonia and listeners. So the journey started many, many years ago in 2011. I was actually practicing as an attorney myself, and in practice experienced a lot of frustrations dealing with advocates and their accounts specifically. And actually the environment, so everything that the systems that exist do not cater for streamlined administration in, for example, attorneys' offices. So dealing with that made me realize that because we're all connecting with each other and there's so many lawyers in the country and there's only so many advocates, the system should actually be engaging so that you do not have to handle the administration upon administration upon administration. And that's when the Auxcon journey started. So I quit the attorney job and missioned into Auxcon, thinking that it would be easy, like a Facebook experience, just bam, and everybody's on board. Unfortunately, the world at that stage was not ready for it. And what we have seen is since COVID, absolutely, we are forced to get to optimization and solutions that serve the collective.
Sure, and it's been a long journey. I mean, 2011 is quite, a while ago. So well done, and you've grown quite significantly since then. And you deal on a daily basis with the legal profession.
Yes, in many ways, many different
In
ways.
many ways. So we're talking today about automation. Sonia, you wanted to ask something there.
Yes, I wanted Rose to explain just the different components that is actually available in Auxcon at the moment, because it's billing, but it's also assistance with debtors. What is the model at the moment? If you can just explain it a bit more.
100%. So currently, and this actually happened as we engaged with the professionals. So we thought that a system alone would solve the problem, a system that's talking to an attorney side and the attorneys in general would serve this. As we started signing professionals or the advocates, we realized the capacity and the scope of their jobs and what is required do not cater at all for them to be actively involved and only work with software. This then developed into services behind our software. So Auxcon, let's call it a plug-and-play system that caters for the environment, where you only have to, for example, enter your fees on matters, and then from there, Auxcon takes care of the rest, so that you do not have the administrative burden, for instance, to reconcile your payments to your invoices, then sending out the monthly statements to the attorneys. And what we all resist doing is following up on those debtors that's not paying us. So, and then also in that regard, the accounting side came, that there's this tax burden on all of us that we have to keep in mind, and we don't, professionals want to do what they do best. It's only practice. So Auxcon, as the years went by, we listened to our clients and listened to what the market wanted, and we built our services, support services around everything that is in need. And that's how it actually evolved to what it is today, a full suite of do what you do best and do not worry and focus on the administrative part. And I think it's extremely important for professionals not to be burdened with those aspects that do not generate income directly for them. And I think that's also the topic of the day is we've got little, our attention span is only that long. And where we place our attention and for how long we place it must absolutely serve our purpose that we are, either in the industry for, or as an advocate or as an attorney. We need to really focus our energy and not expend it on tasks that does not serve us. Is that clear?
Yes. It's absolutely. Now, we're talking about automation. So why, in your experience, I mean, you deal with the industry on a daily basis. Why do you think it's so important, to start automating things?
Well, I think that the thing with automation is the more, every step that is not automated, again, your time and attention needs to go there. So if I have to stop everything that I'm busy doing to now sit down and start loading my bills, and we all know that experience on a Sunday, it's almost month end. Now we have to sit down and we have to reconstruct our bills and think of everything that we've done for the past month, relook at all our notes, etc. That takes energy. And I think the automation discussion is we need to tap into everything that can make those burden and those tasks. And there's many tools lately. I think that even our capacity to look into the tools are difficult. It's very, very difficult for the legal professionals. We'd rather stay on course and continue to do what we've been doing, because we are so overwhelmed daily that we do not have the capacity to even investigate what the solutions are. And I think that's also why what you're presenting on a weekly basis and on a monthly basis is so valuable for legal professionals, because it's almost as if you need to give the solutions and explain why it is a solution, what's the purpose of the solution, and get the drive behind it to implement and to actually dedicate even the time of implementation. But once, and I think that's the value, if you are dedicating that little bit of time that it's going to take to implement something that's going to serve you, we don't need to continue doing this. So that little bit of a time in the beginning is going to streamline the process for you moving forward. We're sitting with advocates that at this stage do not even have to wonder when it is a VAT month, because it's been built into a process and a system whereby they can just focus on what they're doing and they don't need to expend time on these types of functions.
And I think that's where the big value lies, it's in time, because, time is precious. And I think that's one of the messages that we want to, bring forward in our time management course, for example, because you have to find ways to manage your time, because we all only have, 24 hours. We talk about, or Sonia shared the topic that it's finite, and we all have the same time. And if it's gone, it's gone. So I think, that's so important to find ways to save time so that you can focus, like you said, on the things that's important and the things that you actually enjoy doing. And I'm sure you received a lot of resistance in the beginning. How did you overcome that resistance?
With difficulty, great difficulty. I think way back, 2011, definitely, if we take where we are today and rewind that to 13 years ago, it was a different playing field. It was completely different. And things weren't, I don't think that even with WhatsApp, with mails, etc., we weren't that accessible. Today, since COVID, we are 24/7 accessible. So if you think about it, COVID changed a lot for us. Now, all of a sudden, and I think that is what is happening. The resistance way back, I just had to go day by day by day by day. And where we are now is that, the resistance is lighter because the overwhelm is greater. And that's one is about what you guys are doing as well. The only commodity that we've actually got is our time. You can bargain only with your time. How long you spend it, on what do you spend it? And I think that's a very, very, very crucial point. Every single decision that you make in our world, you have to consider, is this time is this how I should be spending my time? What value am I getting from spending it in a certain way? And I think we can have a long discussion about ladies that need to cook at night. That, for instance, if you think about how much time it takes just to apply your mind, what are we going to eat? That is that you are using mental capacity and spending it on that. And then, you know, looking at the services that we render, every single time that you are focusing your attention somewhere, you are spending time. And I think within the legal profession, that is, the awareness is there, but the understanding, the deep understanding, is not yet, has not rippled through yet. But we are too accessible. Now, day and night, in, out, too accessible.
Definitely.
Raz, one of the things that I also think is incredibly powerful on your databases is the actual data you gather. Because in practice, we're just running on a wheel like a hamster, and you've got so much data. So the moment everything is captured, for instance, once you explained to me that you can clearly see what you've, you know, your fee target that you've reached this month compared to last year this time, or if there's something happened in your personal life, or if your practice is taking a downturn or an upwards turn. That type of information is it's priceless, and that can only be done if it's captured on a system. Can you maybe elaborate on what you can actually see from the stats on your side?
So yes, it's interesting because we assist clients and we actually care about every single business. You know, it's a different position that you take on when you are in Auxcon. Is I'm not employed. I'm employed by nobody. I do this because I care. So when I look, I care. But it's interesting. You can see divorces in the figures. You can see struggles. You can see kids being born in the figures. And I always say, you know, those dips that you go through is necessary because the relationships that you are maintaining is very, very important. But actually focusing daily on what you are doing, making sure that there's visibility in that regard, to see how you daily spend your time. We see that users, when they join Auxcon, and we only make them focus per day, the amount of, or the increase in fees that's actually entered into the system, that's invoiced at the end of the month, is insane. It's sometimes double. Just that awareness of every single day. And because Auxcon works on a calendar concept, you can literally see throughout your day how you spend your time. So it was interesting. My husband is also obviously a client, but I looked at when he started using the calendar. So he would daily go, and when he said he was tired, I used to joke with him and say, I'm going to go look at your calendar if you're really tired, because then I want to see the entries, entry slot full throughout the day. Then I can understand that you're tired. But if there's gaps, I would like to know, what did you do with those gaps? So it was a standing joke in our house, to say, at least when you're tired, you want to see why you're tired. If you're spending your time on doing tasks you shouldn't be doing, and you can't see the value for it, that's when you should be concerned, because then you're not utilizing your time effectively.
Yeah, I think it's valuable to be able to measure it, you know, to actually see the stats. And I think like the important thing that you've touched on is the fact that focus on what you are good at. And I see this also sometimes with entrepreneurs in general. You tend to want to do everything yourself because it's your business, you know best, you want to do everything. But the fact is you're not the expert in everything, and that's also okay. And it's just to give over those reins, or just to trust, you know, that the other person is actually, they know what they do and they have your best interests at heart as well.
Yes, I think especially in our profession, we're critical, we're suspicious by nature, we don't trust by nature, we're trained not to trust. To trust another human being, or to trust somebody else with your livelihood and certain functions, is a scary thought. It's really a scary thing. But we are being forced. We're forced to start direct our energy to what we excel at and not anymore on the mundane tasks. So I completely agree with you. I'm guilty, being entrepreneur, to do that everything. And lately, the business force you to do, to start really focusing on what you're good at, but it feels lighter. It feels lighter because when you are spending your energy on something that you love and excel at, you feel lighter. It is actually very valuable to start moving into your flow, into your design, what you were born to do, than to spend your energy on tasks that shouldn't be.
Exactly. Now, let's say, for example, I come to you, as a lawyer, and I've been doing my own finances and everything for 10, 20 years. It might feel a bit daunting, to transition into something new. How difficult or easy is this process when someone comes to you?
Mostly, the control freaks are the best because it's an easy transition.
Okay.
It's more difficult for them to trust. So once you pass that obstacle, then it's a smooth transition because there's nothing really to fix. You're just taking over and you do it better. It is more difficult when it was messy. We can't be spending our time on this source, so we neglect it, we avoid it, we think it away, let's call it rather, crisis manage the situations. And that's what we're finding. And with those clients, it's actually just a relief because they hand it over and they're like, okay, it's not my problem anymore. That's also great to get to that point. I think it's more difficult when you feel that you have been doing it for so long, and letting go is a struggle. Also trust that you're going to do it as well as I did it. I think we do it better because we look at it it's also unemotional. There's an emotional charge that is attached to certain functions, especially the functions that we are executing. There's an emotional charge behind it, which also drains your energy. So I think all these automations that's coming, or all these possibilities of automations coming in, should be embraced, because as you are letting go, it lifts. It's lighter.
Yeah.
Yes, and Rose, coming from the advocacy, and I know you've been asked this question often, but just for our viewers, the relationship between attorneys and clients is a personal relationship. So you've got a relationship with your attorney, you've been working together for years. Handing over that trust, as you say, for you to actually have a discussion with my attorney about payment, that's something that makes everyone in the profession quite uncomfortable, because you think you can manage it better. But as you say, you end up avoiding it, or you end up not having the conversation. So you'd rather not pick up the phone and say, it's been outstanding for 90 days plus. How do you manage that relationship? Because that's a very personal relationship between an attorney and an advocate.
I think firstly, we need to probably address the elephant in the room. There should be proper agreements and negotiations in place. And, from my experience as an attorney myself, when you brief counsel, those discussions should be ahead of the brief. But we avoid those too, and attorneys do that too. So by the time that non-payment is triggered over the period agreed, that is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable for the attorney, and it's very uncomfortable for the advocate. And there is a personal relationship. I think that was also, that was also the reason for the creation of the brand, the Auxcon brand, because we are advocates as a collective are starting to speak from one voice. Not that attorneys are not sitting with the same problem, and we don't disregard that at all. Actually, we are moving into that space where we're saying that this need is exactly the same for the attorney, because the attorney on the other side, again, has the same issue with his client, and he's got those same discussions, those same, so again, we're talking about something that needs to move away and shift away, because the emotions involved around finances, You've done the work, you've delivered the service. You need to get paid. That time that you took away from your family or dedicated to your profession, you should be rewarded for. And the difficulty comes in now, the balance between, I don't want to ask because then I feel like a beggar. And I know the situation maybe on the other side, you know, with attorneys, I understand. I had clients like that myself. You know the personal circumstances that the client is involved in. And again, it makes it difficult for you to pick up the phone and say, council is demanding payment, but actually I also need to get paid. Because of that personal relationship, it is problematic and should actually be pulled away from the professionals. I always say, and I still say this, you do not see doctors following up on their own accounts. They don't phone around to collect their own money. And the personal relationship is one of the reasons that I think advocates and attorneys should not be handling that part. It's too closely connected to you. That's why we created the brand, to say, well, if we start speaking from one voice, and we are planning to very soon, hopefully in the next year, we are planning to extend this service. We've been asked many times, can we do what we're doing for what we've been doing for the advocates? Can we also do this for the attorneys? And we are thinking in that line to also, you know, extend the service to assisting attorneys, which I think will be a great relief and help to them as well.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that it's going to be such a powerful tool for the attorneys to use as well. And what you're involved in a couple of initiatives as well, because you've got so much data, and because it's becoming centralized, or Auxcon has got so much information on payments at this stage. For instance, Auxcon is assisting practitioners with the whole road accident fund. If you can maybe just tell us briefly what you're doing there, because you've got enough data. And that's one of the problems in the legal profession, is it's so split up and nobody, you know, there's not a collective effort. So people are trying to collect or to change a system, but I think what Auxcon is doing is so powerful because they're bringing it together.
Yes, Sonia, I think in this regard, because we from the angle and from the vantage point that we are looking at things, you can identify industry problems. You can identify, for example, the road accident fund. It's not going to assist this office while engaging with attorneys at the current position with our road accident fund to put pressure on an attorney. It's not going to help. The problem is not the attorney. It's our court systems, the taxation dates, it's the road accident fund not paying. What we are able to identify when, from this vantage point that we are looking, is the second that, for example, this, I think it's been a 4-month, it was a 4-month non-payment, it was a payment standstill. But because you're seeing it across the board from different, engaging with different attorney firms, engaging with different advocates, over 400 currently, you see the problems from a different angle. And then our function is to then say, but listen, there's a collective need. And how can we get involved in this collective drive and collective need to assist both parties in the industry? And that's only possible because you are seeing the problem not one-to-one. You're seeing the problem many to many. So you can immediately pick up on that. And that is why Auxcon is involved with, like you rightly said, we engaged with practitioners immediately and said, after the 4 months, and then said, well, let's do something about this, because my experience is that we're all sitting on our own islands, nobody's engaging, and they can't see it. You are focused on doing the job, just writing that or getting in court, and the next day and the next day. You cannot stand still and actually be spending time and focus on these kind of things. You also can't see it from that angle. So these are very exciting initiatives that we get involved in. You know, we, through the engagement with various practitioners, and then specifically one practitioner in town, we have actually reached out and made significant impact that is reaching Parliament level. And that is a very, very needed shift that needs to happen. And what is interesting about that, and from what I was listening when I was engaging, is that the people that should be knowing what is going on the ground floor does not know, but also don't know. So let's say that on government level, they are looking at it from what they are being told, and what they are being told is everything is perfect and there's progress and there's, so practitioners don't necessarily understand. I was told we all understand what's the problem. Yes, we do, but do the right people have that insight and can understand what is going on that level? And that's where Auxcon's data and the collective approach is extremely valuable, because you can then say you are actually representing an industry and you can identify crisis points and you can take it further and do something about it.
Thank you. Yes, and it's obviously the Road Accident Fund is one of the examples, but that would also go for all the state departments and so forth. It's the more collective information you have, the more powerful any movement would be.
Yes, I can tell you that the second that you identify, for example, payment issues, it ripples through the attorney, it ripples to the advocate. Now, the advocate putting pressure on the attorney, again, the attorney cannot stand in, for example, for state debts. They cannot be expected. And you know, but by saying that we need to have everybody held accountable, you actually, for example, let me give an example. Let's say a state-owned enterprise do not pay the attorney cannot pay the advocate, but now the advocate, based on the rules and the judgment of John Keepersat, the Legal Practice Act and the Code of Conduct, now the advocate needs to apply that pressure, and it needs to be done unemotional. The reason why that needs to be done is then the attention, the more we do this, the more the attention of the Legal Practice Council is grabbed, because actually from that level, they are the body that should be looking out for the attorneys and the advocates. But the problems will not come to the front if it's not addressed in this fashion. If we are single-handedly saying, well, I'm not going to put pressure on you because I know that you have not been paid, for example, by a state-owned enterprise, and we keep quiet, we're not solving anything. The attorney is still not getting paid, advocate is still not getting paid, and the services was delivered. And we're all accepting, for example, that scenario as okay, while it is completely not okay.
Yes, and I think from my personal experience is, because of the payment issues that you experienced as an advocate, you always take in more work than what is really strictly necessary, just because you have that fear that you will not collect the difference between what you physically wrote and what the payments are that you receive. So, and I know that with all my colleagues and my husband, everybody is always doing that little bit extra just to have that cushion. And I think the moment you've got security in payments, there would be such a lift of the stress levels, because you wouldn't have to feel that you need to take in more work or work more hours to make up for that shortfall that might happen. I don't know if you've experienced that or seen that in practice.
Absolutely. So I don't think that there's any business that can say, Auxcon can also not say that I'm collecting 100% of every invoice that I'm sending out. But the ratios, and when I say the ratios, I'm reflecting on the data that this week that I drew to look at, is that when you are, for example, in your first 2 years of practice, we actually have a sliding scale where we started interpreting the data per years of admission. And we see there that it's around 52% of what you're invoicing as a junior, which is still high. We get clients into our environment where we look at the history of the data, and it's 50%. You know, if you look at that, also Auxcon systems look at what's the ratio between the invoice and the collected. It's also something that you need to keep in mind when you are looking at your relationship with an attorney, or your relationship then as an attorney with a client. Is that a healthy relationship? Are you just sending me more and more work and you're not paying me? So is that the payment and the invoice or the work ratio, is that absolutely in balance? And what we see is that as you progress through the years, and it's very dependent on the basis that you lay, the foundation that you lay from the beginning of your practice, is that you expect to be paid a certain way. You need to have those uncomfortable discussions with your client or then with the attorney right up front to lay the foundation that it's balanced and correct, so that you do not overexert, overexhaust yourself because you're trying to make up for avoiding those uncomfortable discussions in the collections. What is pertinently coming from the data, when the advocates reach the senior stage, we're looking at a 90+% invoice versus receipt ratio. So there's a lot more respect. Obviously, when you brief senior counsel, you don't want to not pay them. And I think also that needs to ripple through. It's a culture thing, and I think it's in the South African context, it's a culture thing that needs to change. Non-payment for taking up somebody's time it's not okay. I think, yes, we've got the financial position in the country is hectic, but I think, unfortunately, we should learn that respect for each other's time. You cannot tap into my time, take it, when you're not gonna pay for it. It's a culture thing, I think, to a large extent, and then obviously the financial market, it's difficult, out there. But yes, we do see that. Yeah.
And I think Mark and I've often discussed this, as you mentioned, the difficult conversations. It's just a matter of training. And you always say it ripples up from the youngsters, but if they were trained how to have the conversation, how to actually engage with your attorney, engage with your advocate, and have that conversation, if that was just part of normal practice, a lot of these issues wouldn't really be on the table. But no one was really ever taught how to have that conversation with your client or to have that conversation with your counsel, both at the onset of the case or when payment now is due. And I personally think it would make a huge difference if everyone is trained from a young age how to deal with this, because now it's just a culture of mostly avoidance. Let's not have this conversation as far as possible. But I don't know, if you think it will make a major difference in the profession if we start with training.
I think look, for me, with regards to payment, and especially negotiation around payment, I think that should definitely be automated and built into systems, that there's an agreement, and it's an emotionless agreement. I also think that when there's transparency, etc., the attorney and the advocate can, for example, agree that yes, you will get your payment once the payment comes into my account, or for agreed period. There needs to be clearer agreements with the clients, etc. I think where the training more comes in, and where the value of training, starting from very young and then also mature counsel, is really the time and how we spend our time, how we approach our own resilience, that overwhelm, over exhausted, we over everything. This time of the year is special. I feel like a psychologist. There's this last little push. And I think that these tools, our professionals aren't equipped with these tools on how to handle this overwhelm. And I think that training definitely in that regard is absolutely necessary. Is how do I just handle normal life? How do I spend my time? When I'm overwhelmed, what do I do with that overwhelm? I mean, I don't know if you can remember, Sonia, but there was, how many years ago, there was it was a pupil whose life was lost during pupillage phase. And I think, for instance, that if the right training and tools, because in this profession, there's this perception that if you tap into any assistance or tools, etc., it's absurd, it's you weak, and why would you do that? But it's absolutely necessary. Again, we're touching on to where the world is going, and actually where it is right now and where it's going. It's only going to increase. It's going to get worse. It's not all of a sudden going to light up and, you're going to have capacity. it's only going to get worse. And I think that training is extremely important on those topics where, well, how do I deal with my overwhelm? How do I deal with even past experiences playing into my current field of where I'm practicing and what I'm doing? We can't ignore those, and it's important to get the right assistance from a very young age.
Definitely. So, Rosemary, thank you so much. What I love about you is that if you see trends, in the stats, like you said, you can see that you truly care. It's not just, a business that you run. When you see there's trends and there's problems in the industry, you actually, you get down to it, you get with your connections and you try to actually do something about it. And that's what I think that's what's inspiring of what you do, is that you always try to change things, and bring transformation and awareness. And yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think just to wrap up in terms of the automation part is, if you are at that point where you realize that you have to start automating, look for credible sources, like yourself, who've been in business for such a long time. The proof, is there. So I think that's a very important thing, that you have credible sources, that you connect with to automate. And as you said, if you want to be successful, be the best that you possibly can be, you have to focus on what you're an expert in. And that is not the administrative part of it necessarily. So Rosemary, where can people get hold of you if they want to get in touch?
Well, our website is www.auxcon.co.za. I believe our details are on there. I think that my personal cell phone number is also on there. Or just, send me a mail inquiry. It's ROSEMARIE at Auxcon, AUXCON.co.za.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Rosemary. We will also put those links, in the description. It was so lovely to talk to you and see the industry from a different perspective. So thank you so much for that. We can always have another conversation, because there's so many topics actually that you can see in the trends that I would like to discuss. So everybody that's watching, listening, thank you so much for tuning in again. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see any future chats that we will have. And we'll see you then again in the next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.